in the Sustainable Development Goals.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Blair Stewart. I'm a farmer on the PJ Agro Park in St. Thomas. I am a cassava planter. I have seasonal crop of onion, Irish potato, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin.
Since the onset of COVID-19, many female farmers like Charmaine have limited or no access to their usual markets. Many have lost produce valued at thousands of dollars needed to support their families.
The challenge that I face mostly is lack of storage facility. I harvested 23,000 pounds of Irish potato. And of that 23,000 pounds, I sold 3,131 pounds. Other farmers across the country need to market their produce. The produce suffered.
Through the purchase of locally grown produce, the project will create a secure market for rural female farmers while meeting the food and nutrition demands of vulnerable families. These families will receive food care packages that will include locally grown fruits and vegetables. By supporting local supply chains, we are supporting livelihoods, reducing food and nutrition insecurity, and enhancing Jamaica's agricultural response and recovery to COVID-19.
Nothing's a one in a detention room. Pure tension in a detention room. Nothing's a one in a detention room. Detention room. Nothing's a one in a detention room. Pure tension in a detention room. Nothing's a one in a detention room. Detention room. We are the union crew. Everything we have new. Teachers lose them cool. We're boom and cut school. If we get the money, come back in a hurry. We kick boy in the face, so we're not sorry. We cut and go through. Up we get rich soon.
Fast on a plane, taking off to the moon, but not see the street, I'm not
push no room. Cause I beer bad things in a detention room. Beer bad things in a detention room. Pure tension in a detention room. Nothing's a one in a detention room. Detention room.
You know what I can't understand? I can't understand how my old friends did not like my picture on Instagram. So who tell us that we are friends?
You know, to say you're fat girl, not hot girl.
How much time you forgot to tell us to stop posting on Instagram because you're not ready yet?
You're not ready
and
yet.
That's a number one. As a matter of fact, boom boom, I'm thirsty. Go get me a little water.
I may want a bag juice.
Hurry up. I can sit next to you?
Sure.
I want to him. Omar, I want to you.
Yo, I'm gonna kill myself, you know, man.
What you say? You're gonna take your precious life because of them two bully there, eh?
All right, I'm gonna tie them up one and kill them.
Then that makes sense to you, Omar? Eh? Come again, man. That makes sense to you?
I sure nobody no trouble you know. Them afraid of your mother?
No. Them not afraid of me, nor my mother, but I am a strong girl and me not take foolishness. And furthermore, Duppy, no one who, for frighten.
That easy for you, say.
Omar, come and talk to you.
Yo, Sean, the detention room, you mash up with thing, you know. So that me talk about my you know we have whole heap of business to take care of on the road.
Yeah, man, we know what kind of business you know in there.
Yo, Michael, what I'm to you? You always go like you want to come spoil up my thing.
You need to do better, that's all me I tell you.
Do better, that's you say?
Yes, do better.
So you don't think the whole school know what your man I do?
Well, wipe the beam out of your eye first.
Yeah, and you wipe the beam out of your man eye.
You know say you're embarrassing in that school, yeah?
So we are try say I know Empress. Yeah, tell me say the expensive hair me by you. You know like them things, eh? You are going like saying, know where this come from, you know. You want, I have some important calls to make, Zane.
This scamming, this bullying, and this loan sharking people. Come on, do better, man.
Yo, up to the girl, yeah, man. Yo, it come like, she don't know what this thing really is about, you know.
You don't know what this education thing is really about.
Oh, all right. This thing is about making a living. Money have to make the real way. What am I say?
Money have to make the real way.
Yeah.
I guess if you have money have to make, scamming have to go on. The real way.
Yeah, I actually this bullying thing is a survival thing, you understand?
Yeah, it's a gangster living is a survival thing. And me can't survive without my tribe. Yeah?
Guys, I saw no really want to live.
That's not funny.
No, me can't live so.
Change your responsibility now.
Making a choice, be bold and use your voice. We're tired of the bullying, the scamming and all. We got to live it, no make it at all. Oh no, no, oh no, make a choice.
In Jamaica, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, in collaboration with the Jamaica 4-H clubs, is supporting 12 schools to rehabilitate their school gardens. Under the Homegrown School Feeding Program, school meal programs have been linked to local food production. Schools under the program are benefiting from a range of irrigation and production kits and technical guidance to maintain their school gardens. These gardens are a source of fresh fruits and vegetables that help to meet the food and nutrition needs of students. Since the onset of COVID-19, as many schools have remained closed and students have not benefited from the provision of school meals, schools like Newell High School in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, continue to ensure that their school gardens remain active and can provide students and communities with much-needed local produce. FAO and the Jamaica 4-H clubs are helping some of these schools to ensure that students and community members remain food secure and are able to access locally grown food to promote healthier diets. By rehabilitating and maintaining school gardens, we are helping to create a more inclusive and resilient agri-food system so that we can have better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life for all.
My name is Audrey Ellington, principal of the Newell High School in Southwest St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. In our school garden, we grow mainly vegetables. We have callaloo, corn, pak choy, sweet pepper, hot pepper. We also do escallion, and at times we do cabbage and beetroot. Before COVID, for our school garden, the students would have gotten the chickens to eat. At one time, we also had layers, and so that assisted in our breakfast program, where we usually produce breakfast in the mornings for our students. And on the farm, we also have plantain, and so the plantain was also used for our breakfast.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us today for our panel on gender-based violence and citizen security. We're pleased to have a number of you joining us in person and online, and I'm pleased to be blessed by a very mixed and experienced panel. We're looking forward to some excellent discussions. My name is Monique Long. I am a planning and coordination specialist with the UN Women Multi-Country Office of the Caribbean, and we operate in 22 countries and territories in the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. I would like to take this moment to introduce my esteemed panel, starting with my right, Dr. Cynthia Peto, lecturer and coordinator for the Mona School of Nursing program at the University of the West Indies. Welcome, Dr. Peto. Next to her, we have Ms. Vanna Lawrence, program manager with the European Union delegation. To my left, we have Ms. Phaedra Saunders, director of people business and partner, Flow Jamaica. And finally, we have Dr. Tamika Peart, director of the National Shelter program with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. Let's make them welcome. As you know, Jamaica is struggling and continues to struggle with high rates of crime and violence. We know this includes significant violence against women and girls, and we know that this goes beyond a human rights issue, but goes directly to our sustainable development. Now, one of the key gaps we've recognized in a lot of the discourse around citizen security has been that gender-based violence and violence against women and girls is unusually absent. We recognize that much of the discourse is around organized crime, drug interdiction, human trafficking, violent crime, and public safety, but very often GBV and VOG aren't meaningfully integrated into the discourse on citizen security. Data indicates that 8% of victims of selected major crimes are children, and 60% of those are girls. 1/5 of Jamaican women through the Reproductive Health Survey have indicated that they were sexually abused as children. The survey also indicates that 27.8% of women have experienced intimate partner violence, either sexual or physical violence at the hands of their partners. 39% of Jamaican women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence, be it physical, sexual, emotional, or economic. Gender-based violence is a development and human rights issue. It requires a joint, coordinated, sustainable response, and it has to be seen as a sustainable issue to move it from the private sphere and into public discourse. We've recognized that while there are a number of documents that speak significantly to national security, including our security policy and Vision 2030, and we recognize the importance of security being important and necessary for citizens to thrive, one of the key issues continues to be we're not exploring citizen security within the context of gender-based violence. Today, we're hoping to connect some of those dots and to open up the discourse to our colleagues on the panel and with you in the room and online to discuss more meaningfully what gender-based violence and citizen security looks like within the Jamaican context. So we're going to start off with a few questions and then we'll allow the panelists to expound a bit more on their work. So I will allow you to speak a bit on your own work and then we'll dive into the questions. Dr. Pitta, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I am a nurse and a midwife, homegrown. I give gratitude to the University Hospital and the University of the West Indies. I've just completed my PhD in gender studies. As you know, or what do we know? We know that women across all demographics are violated by their intimate partner, and maybe once, sometimes, all the times, and it can escalate across the life cycle. We also know that all women are vulnerable, but more importantly, some are more vulnerable more than others. For example, my PhD work focused on gender-based violence among pregnant women. Why pregnant women? Pregnant women are more vulnerable because we are looking at 2 lives or more than 2 lives. We know that the mothers, they are the ones who is to take care of the next generation. But we have a set of professionals that we call midwives, that we refer to them as heroes. And I recognize in my study as a nurse, as a midwife, that there were gaps in our training as how we relate to screening for pregnant women, screening for gender-based violence among pregnant women. So that's where my work came in as a researcher. So what I've done was to bring some visibility to pregnant women who are exposed to gender-based violence, and also midwives who are should be prepared to attend to those women. Over my studies, my prevalence that I identify, I must tell you that the women's health research that was done said that 5% of pregnant women are exposed to gender-based violence. My study showed that 36% of all pregnant women are exposed to gender-based violence. And that is parallel to the general data. About 1/3 of women are exposed to gender-based violence. And that is very significant, because if 36% of us here should end up having to report that we have COVID, nobody would want to be inside this room. So it's very important that we, while, to think that our children are being born in homes that are abusive, and just think about the next generation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pito. And I definitely recognize and flag the note from the Women's Health Survey, rather, the 2016 Women's Health Survey, that pointed to pregnancy being one of the risk factors in Jamaica. It was recognized that there was a higher rate of prevalence of violence against pregnant women, with I think about 20% of pregnant women who had experienced intimate partner violence saying that they had been kicked or harmed in the area of their abdomen. So again, we recognize that there's a very distinct form of violence that occurs, and an added layer of vulnerability for pregnant women. We're very pleased to have you. Vanna, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and a bit on EU's work in Jamaica.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, I'm Vanna Lawrence. I'm Program Manager at the European Union with responsibility for justice, governance, gender, human rights, and civil society organizations. Now, as an organization, the European Union has as one of its core values that of gender equality. And the European Union has made a global commitment that over 85% of all of its programs and all of its international financing must be gender responsive. So in Jamaica, we were tasked as a European Union delegation to have robust discussions and consultations with a wide number of stakeholders to develop what we call a country-level implementation plan. That country-level implementation plan has to be reflective of the situation on the ground to ensure that whatever programs are being implemented here in Jamaica reflects the situation on the ground. And so every year we continue our consultations with civil society, with gender experts, and we find many of them within the UN. And so we do have a great working group on gender, which we had only this week. The EU intends for its current funding program to do the majority of its work in the area of good governance and human security. As it relates to gender responsiveness, the focus is to ensure that women and men, boys and girls exist in a situation where they feel secure. And this is our focus on citizen security. They feel secure to operate safely in public, private, and online spaces. We have an ongoing citizen security program that has a distinct gender focus. In fact, one of the indicators under this citizen security program looks at the national shelters for victims of violence, gender-based violence, but predominantly violence within the homes. One of the indicators seeks to measure whether these shelters are not only established, but whether they are operationalized. We're putting a focus on the capturing and storing and analyzing of data in Jamaica to see how this data assists the government of Jamaica to make more gender responsive plans and implement programs that are quite gender responsive, from gender sensitive budgeting to recognizing that the education of boys and girls will be different because the situations of violence that is experienced by boys and girls affect them differently as victims and as perpetrators. So the EU continues to use the government of Jamaica's plans to deliver on programs primarily through a budget support modality. And this allows the government to have the funds in its consolidated funds to spend in a way that reflects the needs on the ground. Of course, it is limited by some performance measures, but it facilitates the government to deliver on programs that really reach the people at the points of need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intervention. And again, colleagues, we recognize that on the panel, we have quite a mixture of expertise. We have representatives from academia, we have representatives from the donor community, and now we jump over to private sector. Phaedra, please.
Hi.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you. Please, you can tell us a bit about your work and a bit about the excellent work that Flo has been doing in this space.
Yes. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So as you said, my name is Phaedra Saunders. My job at Flow is people. So I'm responsible for people in the organization. Now, in our organization, in our Jamaica business, almost 50% of our employee population is women. Now, when you think about the statistics, I believe it was 1 in 4. I think it's now, is it still 1 in 4? If you think that 1 in every 4 women, if we have a team of 4 women sitting in a room in a meeting, it is highly likely that 1 or more have been affected by gender-based violence. It is very important for us that we are doing something as a large organization. So we have put in a policy. We have a policy in place. The policy has provisions. We have an external partner, Family Life Ministries, and how our policy support operates is that if someone is affected in any way, they can reach out to us internally or to the external partner. The external partner assesses the need and says to us, this is the support the individual requires. And that support ranges from removing the person from the situation they're in physically, if we need to support them with finding somewhere else to live, literally, if it's legal support, whatever support. And it's not just for the mother, the wife, the woman, it is also for her if she has children. We have declared and we have put in our policy and educated all our people in our organization that we simply stand against violence in all its forms. And we believe that that was, very important for us to make that statement. And that also extends to policies around sexual harassment and our zero tolerance approach for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And speaking about creating spaces and recognizing that, we have to take a step further. We have these strong policies, but what next? What happens when women need a place to go? And considering that, we go to Dr. Peard, representing the Ministry of Gender, Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and leading on the shelter program in Jamaica. Dr. Peard, tell us a bit about your work.
Okay. As said earlier, my name is Dr. Peard, and I have been on the National Shelter Strategy. And I am particularly happy that we started this discussion this morning by mentioning the Women's Health Survey that guides really the government of Jamaica's plans and programs in the elimination and reduction of gender-based violence. Now, within the context of the work that I have been doing over the years, there is information from the Women's Health Survey that there are lifetime impacts coming from women's victimization where domestic violence and intimate partner violence is concerned. Coming out of that within the context of being in a ministry that is leading the gender mainstreaming program for the government of Jamaica, as well as a ministry overall that is looking at human capital development in the country, we understand that what the data is telling us is that intimate partner violence, particularly, domestic violence, particularly intimate partner violence, it creates a structural hindrance for women and girls to equally access socially valued goods in the country. And coming out of that information, the ministry created a brand new unit. Prior to 2020, there was no national shelter unit in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. And coming out of that, we now have a national shelter unit. as well as a national unit that is in charge of the GBV helpline. Now, coming out of those two spaces that work closely together, we realized that we have to work on having coordinated spaces and coordinated functions that respond to the needs of women. Now, I'll talk about the whole process of coordination and how that has helped the government of Jamaica to respond to the women who approach us. And note I started off by saying the women who approach us, because by no means are we saying that we are responding to all of the needs. We have work to do where that is concerned. But suffice to say, at this point, I'm very happy that where the Ministry of Gender in particular is concerned, the Citizen Security Secretariat were integrally involved with their work. It is very promising in terms of the inclusion of gender as a cross-cutting theme in how the country responds to national security. And so I'll be talking about that later, but as one of the direct focal points, I'm very happy to be in this discussion this morning. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Pearl. So we want to dive a bit more meaningfully into what are some of the innovative practices that have been working. We've recognized that very often there is a gap between the discourse on citizen security and gender-based violence. But as we try to bridge the gap and as we try to ensure that our responses are sustainable, meaningful, impactful, leaving no one behind, I'd love to know from your different perspectives, what are some of the things that have been working? What are some of the innovative, emerging, existing better practices to address citizen security and gender-based violence? Who wants to take the first whack at it? Do you?
All right, so in health, what are the things that are innovative? I can speak for the Faculty of Medical Sciences. You know, there is 7 disciplines. There's training. For example, the EU Spotlight Initiative Jamaica, through a consultancy, was enabled us to integrate or strengthen the gaps that were in the the MBBS program and nursing program in integrating violence against women and girls. So we have now in the pre-service curricula started to prepare our nurses and our medical students on how to respond to gender-based violence. Also, the Ministry of Health, they now have their in-service program, which they have also developed various guidelines. For example, the referral pathway for the survivors of gender-based violence, that was a multidisciplinary, or including some CSO who participate in that. Protocol for the management of common mental disorder, management of interpersonal violence procedure for healthcare workers. So, so both pre-service and in-service, there is no training going on. And we are using the WHO international curriculum, that's standard, in preparing our students and our healthcare practitioners.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent. And again, we recognize the importance of not only, doing trainings and capacity strengthening, but a sustainable model of integrating the information in existing curricula so that even beyond the scope of projects, the work, the information remains, it's a sustainable model. I'd like to throw over to Dr. Peart to ask a bit about the shelter program and a bit more broadly as well about what the ministry and the Bureau of Gender Affairs has been doing specifically around the area of gender-based violence.
Okay, so first to begin with, the shelter program, very young, but still very promising. I am happy to say that when mention was made of the referral pathway, that's one of what we have corrected at such a young stage in the life of the National Shelter Program. So last year, it's June of this year, we launched the GBV coordination platform, and that was by way of the support that we have received from the Spotlight Initiative. We have also included in that the referral pathway, which increases the accountability for us as government in terms of how we provide service delivery. What are some critical must take place part of the process where GBV service delivery is concerned? And if it is not in place, what are the channels to ensure that this is reported on? We've also had extensive work being done on building the coordination process. So when we work with a client, it may be a client with children. And coming out of that process, we realize that, yes, we have the policy directive, we have the guidelines, we have the actions in place, but we have to work across the platform of the government of Jamaica. And so that coordination has seen us working and working with other service providers in different ministries, departments, and agencies, and having signed memoranda of understanding with critical ministries, departments, and agencies. We have also continued to build on what has been a very good practice where private-public partnership is concerned with the implementation of shelters in Jamaica. We work closely with Women Inc. that has had years of good track record where the implementation and operationalization of shelters are concerned in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. So where the service delivery aspect of clients are concerned, we have what are called guidelines for the operationalization of shelters. And again, that holds us responsible. And a big part of the process for when clients come to us within the shelter program is that we have to be people-centered. People-centered from the standpoint that we don't dictate to clients what their treatment will look like, what their plans for recovery will look like. It is a process where they are empowered to develop their own treatment plans, and we work with them. We hold their hands throughout the system and then take them back to life as a survivor and not a victim. We have also started the process of taking this to the parish level, again, because of injection of support from the Spotlight Initiative. We have realized that doing the MOUs at the top is just one component of the work. We have to work with our partners in civil society, particularly in rural parts of Jamaica where the service delivery does not look the same as urban Jamaica. And that in of itself, I'm big on state accountability, where I'm big on women having equal access to socially valued goods. And that process of working with our civil society actors have significantly improved what we have been able to deliver for women and girls within the short life of the shelter program. I can go into what the Bureau of Gender Affairs has been doing outside of the shelters in a brief nutshell. So we have been working on amending key legislations, and you would have seen that sometimes being introduced or being reminded to the public. We have realized that there is need to work on the minds of the young people in Jamaica where the creation or the where changes of values and attitudes are concerned. And so the Gender Ambassadors Program is one of the flagship programs for the Bureau of Gender Affairs, where it concerns working with young people. That takes the Bureau of Gender Affairs directly into the schools in partnership with the Ministry of Education to get ambassadors for this cross-cutting theme of gender that we are trying to mainstream across Jamaica. That has been a successful undertaking to date. We also have the helplines that I talk about. The helplines really was introduced to the public in at the unit level in March of this year, and that has also had success because we are realizing that providing a toll-free number is just one part of the conversation. Women need non-traditional means of communicating their concerns where GBV is concerned. And this may be something as simple as having WhatsApp messaging to communicate to the state that this is what is happening, and directives can be given on how we can coalesce, we can have a conversation on what this process will look like for you to exit the situation safely. There is the last one that I'm going to mention is that we now have a sexual harassment unit. And this is coming out of what we have achieved as a ministry where the sexual harassment legislation is concerned. That will see us having a senior investigative officer and investigative officers who are there to respond to public complaints, where sexual harassment is concerned. So I think that would be it, but there's more that I could go into.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I also know that the BGA and the ministry has a refocus program that works with perpetrators of violence.
Yes.
And again, it's important for us to, always keep in mind the importance of working with all of the different parties.
Yes.
I think one of the key things has been ensuring that as we build out our response, as we continue to change social norms, we're also recognizing that even for perpetrators, there has to be some intervention to ensure that we're working with them and to ensure that we're rebuilding communities.
And that is a critical entry point to the conversation, because we've realized that we cannot leave men out of the conversation when we are talking about domestic violence. And so the Bureau has been able to strengthen, first to begin with, in 2016, it moved from being the Bureau of Women's Affairs to the Bureau of Gender Affairs. And there is a male helpline that men can call to report on these gender-specific issues that they are having. Some of the times the support may not be that somebody is directly involved in gender in a space, but it can be that that person, for instance, I work closely with the Tower Street Adult Remand Center, and that has seen me taking a gender perspective to the work that is done over there.
Excellent, excellent. I'm throwing to Phaedra before I go over to Vanna to talk a bit more meaningfully about the Spotlight Initiative, but we'd love to hear a bit about what Flow does, how Flow is using innovative practices as a leader in the public sector, the private sector rather,
Right.
to respond to these issues.
Yeah, so I mean, apart from introducing the policy internally, we are starting now to educate our communities. So we have business customers, and we are starting to put together webinars and so on to invite them. You would have heard recently that we launched a new product, Jump. One of the intentions behind that is to ensure that persons in vulnerable communities, underserved communities, have access to communication means, because one of the things we have recognized based on our experience is that sometimes you have employees in the organization, they have lost a device, they don't want to come forward again to ask, or they don't have communication in the home for one reason or another. Last year, it was last year also, our Flow Foundation partnered with Mona School of Business to build out several programs to equip persons with skills. Now, we didn't target just women, but we did target, again, vulnerable persons, because one of the things we recognize is that if you have, so digital skills are one of the, emerging sets of skills that it does have multi-purposes. You can launch into many different careers using these skills. And we went on that program because we recognize also that you do have women out there who are not employed or who are employed but need more support in order to be able to, support themselves, transition out of situations that they may be in. And I mean, I just wanted to add that inside our organization, our gender-based violence policy, right? We have educated all our persons and everybody in our organizations, but particularly the managers in our organization, supervisors. One of the great things that we have recognized has emerged out of it is that supervisors in our organization are able to come forward now and say, you know, I have this individual and I think there may be a situation of violence that it may not be physical violence, but some other abuse that she's dealing with in the home. We find also that they're way more supportive. If they're coaching on performance, it's one of the things that they're listening for and looking at, depending on changes in behaviors and that kind of a thing. We really do believe that, you know, this is just something, this is the right thing to do. And we're very passionate about that. We're looking forward to November 25th to be able to you know, launch our webinars within the business community, and we're going to be doing more around that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I know that as well, we had done some work through UN Women and the Spotlight Initiative, including the private sector. And one of the key things we were attempting to do, and I think have done relatively successfully, is linking the private sector entities that would have signed on to the Women Empowerment Principles. And again, colleagues, these are a series of principles that reinforce the importance of gender equality in the workspace, and which a number of private sector entities have been able to sign on to within the Jamaican context. I will now throw over to Vanna and the EU, because it just so happens that two of the key programs that would have been referenced, including the Win-Win program and the Spotlight Initiative, were heavily funded through the EU.
Yes, thank you, Monique. I believe the European Union recognizes very, very pointedly that in a maturing country such as Jamaica, the parachuting in of aid, you know, the model where you bring all these expert people with all their funds and drop it into a country, it doesn't work, and it wouldn't work for Jamaica. So what we have done at the EU is that we recognize where the expertise is existing in country. You will see this model, for example, in the support for the UN's expertise in delivering on gender programs, such as the Spotlight Initiative, such as the Win-Win program. The EU provided the funding, the UN provided the expertise, and that collaboration has been successful in delivering on a program that is well needed in Jamaica. Incidentally, it is going to be extended until the end of next year because the work is not yet done. The work needs to continue. Also, the EU has found that if we really want to achieve a cascading approach of the implementation and the innovations getting all the way to beneficiaries who are very far away and very hard to reach, we must implement through civil society organizations. And so within the EU body of funds, at least 10% of all funds are dedicated towards implementation by civil society organizations. It is a competitive process indeed. Some CSOs are not very attracted to approaching the EU for funding because it is difficult. But you have to understand that there is a significant amount of money to be had and there has to be accountability. Now, the EU also supports governments to implement programs for the benefit of its own citizens. And this is done through budget support because what we have found is that for sustainability, you have to have ownership. And the best way to ensure ownership is if people actually need these products and people get to implement it themselves in their own way. For example, in the recently concluded Justice Budget Support Program, the government of Jamaica outlined that women and men in the rural parishes who are suffering from gender-based violence find it hard to access family courts. They have to wait until the family court in the parish center is sitting, probably once per month, probably twice. But in order to receive a protection order, which is very, very needed, it's an emergency situation, that individual would have to wait a week or 2 weeks to receive that kind of a service. And so under the Budget Support Justice Program, the government of Jamaica outlined that it was really necessary that additional family courts be established in rural parishes and for the benefit of beneficiaries who are mostly women seeking protection orders or affiliation orders. And also these family courts serve as juvenile courts for children, majority of whom are boys, who are being brought before the court. This program assisted the government in implementing 4 family courts in rural parishes. And so what I would say is what we would boast of as the EU is that we have come to a position of recognizing that a mature democracy such as Jamaica is to be allowed to implement programs for itself using its own policies. And we are also supporting expertise, such as in the UN and in the CSOs, to deliver programs because we believe ownership will lead to greater sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Vanna. And it's excellent to have had you here because you have, I think, so much of the insight into what the programmatic work is currently looking like on the ground, and a little bit of the Jamaican experience, a lot of the Jamaican experience. Yeah. Your knowledge and insight from that context, recognizing, especially what it looks like from a donor perspective, and recognizing the importance of not just throwing funds and running away, but meaningfully understanding what absorption rate reasonably look like within our context, what the capacity of many of our CSO partners look like, what the specific needs of government looks like, and being adaptable and flexible enough to respond to those needs. So I do recognize that one of the key things you also mentioned is the importance of CSOs. And I think that flows very easily into our next question, which is looking at who are the major players, who are the major people that we have to be integrating into these conversations as we try to move the dialogue further, as we try to enhance what citizen security and the response to GBV looks like. Besides ensuring we are pulling CSOs to the table, who else should be at the table?
Private organizations, definitely. If you think about it, everywhere you turn on the mall, everywhere there are companies, right? Organizations. People are employed there, women are employed there. In that 8-hour workday is a great opportunity to engage with women but to educate all within the organization. A woman may be suffering in silence, but when you open that conversation, normalize that one can speak about it and then share the resources that are available. Put a policy in your organization against violence. It's just zero tolerance against violence in your organization. And you have men in the organization who it applies to. Now, when the conversation is open, the women are freer, feel freer to speak about it. You share where the resources are. I believe that, we have a huge role to play. Remember also that our women are the mothers that are nurturing. They're also nurturing the sons. I believe it's Dr. Herbert Gale who has significant studies about the impact of just, the nurturing, the being, comforted, that social contact, that support that's provided by a mother that is being, abused and so on, is living in fear pretty much, right? We want our people to come to work whole, bring their whole self to work, be comfortable in whatever space they are, and know the environment is supportive. So I believe the organizations, no matter whether it's small, medium, or a large organization, I believe the conversation needs to be open there. There are significant resources from the West, the UN Women rather, that can be, that they can draw on to be able to put the information in their workplace, provide the support and that sort of thing. So that's my point of view on that.
Yes, excellent point. Dr. Parrott?
So one of the charges that we have received from the principal director at the Bureau of Gender Affairs, Mrs. Sharon Coburn Robinson, is that the social workers who do public engagement they have to interface with those surprising points of entry into understanding the public and gauging public sentiment where domestic violence is concerned. And in just a very simple approach as taking it to the streets, or take it to the streets as it is called, you find that people such as taxi drivers and bartenders and hairdressers are very important players in us responding to domestic violence as a country. I mean, I am fortunate to have moved up through the Bureau of Gender Affairs as a director of community engagement. I was also a research officer, but in those capacities, when you interface with, I remember a taxi driver talking to me about a night when his last passenger was a woman and she wanted somebody to talk to because she was about to slit her wrist. And we have to find ways to engage people like this at their level. They see themselves as being important determinants of women and also men having a safe space where they can go to. Bartenders too, when you talk to them, they are informal counselors to several men who are living in spaces of inner conflict with self and having issues concerning intimate partner violence at home. You have bartenders who will use their space to have that makeshift counseling session with men. We have hairdressers who, through that moment of bonding with another woman, shares what it means to empower yourself as a woman or as a young girl. So I think one of the important entry points to this conversation is that we have to look into these irregular spaces. The women's fellowships in the churches across Jamaica are important entry points. Important entry points to get churches to get on board with us. They are with us, but in a fulsome way for the operations of the church to integrate gender in a nuanced way. It is more than just having women in leadership roles in the churches, but having the facility, having the organization functioning in a nuanced way that enable women to see gender coming out of the functions of that space. You are looking at community-based organizations that are out there doing the work, but they are not resourced the way that they should be, and they don't have the capacity to meet the requirements of agencies that are providing funding support. How do we help these entities to come up to the level where they are also and can be empowered to provide that kind of empowerment to persons who are on the ground? There are also the students council movements across the country. I don't know if you've been seeing what is in the media about this whole Molly issue and school-based, gender-based violence and how we respond to those. But the student council body, as it is in Jamaica, is also a very important entry point. And I just want the takeaway from my conversation here to be that we have to start looking into these irregular spaces for national level empowerment for at-risk populations.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, I think that was a very valuable intervention. Meeting people where they are in all spaces that they are. I'll throw out the final question because my colleagues have been telling me to wrap up. But the final question truly is, what next? You know, what are the gaps that remain to be addressed, and where are there opportunities? But how do we move forward? I don't know if Dr. Peter, you have any insights on this?
For in health, the gaps that are there, the women need resources. They need resources. So, and definitely training for all of our healthcare professionals. Whenever like she said, the institution, we are to use the healthcare sector to make the changes and to mainstream gender in health, because other changes will come. For example, a lot of healthcare workers are also women, and they are also exposed. So we want to change attitudes. And when attitudes are changed, then would be in a better position to able to deal with women who are exposed to gender-based violence.
Excellent.
I believe that there is need for more fathers clinic, have a clinic for fathers alone so they can express themselves also.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Vanna, closing remarks and also gaps and opportunities.
I feel very honored to have the closing remarks indeed. I believe it is time we recognize that everybody belongs at the table in a discussion on gender-based violence. And the very broadness of the term gender-based violence needs to give credence to the fact that violence happens to women and it happens to men. And it's primarily on the basis of the gender that they have assumed. And so I think if we want to take a radical approach, maybe we should say, okay, the older ones like us, we probably are very old dogs and we can't learn. Therefore, I think we should have a very systematic and strategic approach towards educating younger persons, to developing a culture or even a subculture of an intolerance towards violence and an intolerance towards all issues of gender-based violence. So all of us should come to the table and all of us should recognize that speaking about issues of violence and gender-based violence should become a table talk, a main talk. There should be no part of this situation where we're hiding from any longer. And once we start being very open about speaking about the fact that people are targeted simply for who they are. You are a woman, therefore you're weaker, therefore I'll step to you. You're homosexual, therefore you are projecting weakness, therefore I will do something to you just because of who you are. We need to start to speak about it, and we need to start to develop a culture of intolerance towards all forms of violence, but specifically gender-based violence.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful, and thanks again to our esteemed panel, Dr. Tamika Peart from the Ministry of Culture, Gender and Entertainment and Sport, Dr. Cynthia Pito, lecturer at the Mona School of Nursing, Ms. Vanna Lawrence, program manager at the EU delegation, and finally, Ms. Phaedra Saunders from Flow Jamaica. It truly has been an excellent conversation. We are very grateful for the insights and the knowledge that has been shared with us today. As we have to cut this session, I do invite colleagues to go outside for a break and return in 15 minutes for the panel on youth and inclusivity. But thank you again to the panel. Thank you for your insights, and thank you to the colleagues who have been so kind to join us in the session today. Have a great morning.
The joint SDG Fund is committed to strengthening resilience and ending the vulnerabilities of small island developing states. The multiplicity of socioeconomic and environmental vulnerabilities, in addition to the shocks caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, have been detrimental to the island nations, but SIDS are resilient. They are building forward better by developing innovative financing solutions to strengthen the protection of vulnerable groups and creating greener and bluer economies. Sustainable growth will require economic diversification and greater participation from a young, skillful workforce. And to lessen the effects of disasters, access to modern, innovative technologies led by digitization are critical. For economic growth and food production, healthy oceans are vital for the well-being of coastal communities by improving livelihood sectors of fisheries and ecotourism. To secure these smart investments, mobilizing partnerships with the private sector, civil society, and governments are fundamental to empowering small island developing states